So let's get on with it. Please welcome to the stream Dan, Kyle, and Tom. Hello, guys. How you doing?
Hi.
Hey, mate. How you doing?
Hello. Thanks for joining me. I'm going to start by saying I'm very well, thank you. Just going to start by asking how you're doing and how your start of 2021 has been. Good answer.
Yeah, pretty good.
I think that silence answers it as perfectly as anyone could, really.
Yeah, missing the pub, if I'm honest.
Classic. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, it's been all right, thanks, man. Interesting times. It's all been said before, much more by much more articulate people than me or potentially us. But I guess, like, personally, being able to release this reorchestrated film has been a real, like, wonderful distraction and something to focus on. And yeah, we've been pretty busy making music, so have been able to lose ourselves a little bit in that. But yeah, global pandemics are weird, man.
It's almost like it's never happened before and we don't know how to deal with it.
Almost, yeah. How about you, man? How's the beginning of your 2021 been?
Weirdly busy. Like, it's strange how busy it's been, but yeah, that similar vibe of just feeling a little bit sort of lost in all of it and not really, just even sometimes having a normal experience sometimes at the moment feels like I don't know how to do it anymore.
Yeah, it's going to be very strange when I say when life goes back to normal, as if
I can't hear.
As
Dan.
if life
Is that
was
just
normal
me?
in the first place. Oh, I can hear me.
I've lost Dan. Can anybody else hear him?
I can hear Dan.
Yeah, I can hear Dan.
Okay.
Well, that's weird. I wonder if it's
Tom,
just me.
can you hear me? Oh no.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, sorry, Jack.
Can you guys hear
say anything
me
right
and
now.
can you guys hear Dan?
I can hear you and Dan. Hear some very good things.
As long as everybody else can hear you, I'm just going to ask you questions and you can answer them.
Guys, what can I...
until we get this sorted.
Okay, feel free to.
And I will just try and read your faces for now. So, for people who might not know about Reorchestrated, can you tell us a little bit about what it is and how it came together? Like a brief sort of a brief intro into what Reorchestrated is.
Yeah, Tom, would you like to introduce your film?
Sure. So the film itself basically came to life, as in I've been working with the guys since like day dot basically, and the film itself came into sort of like being like a real thing after the guys had done these reorchestrated shows where they took the Bastille music and basically reorchestrated it with an amazing guy called Johnny Abrams and played all the Bastille tunes that you know well in a completely different way and reorchestrated it with variously larger and larger orchestras as the time went on. The film itself started off really being about the shows, and it was sort of going to be, almost like more like a live film about these special shows. And then it quickly became apparent that there was a sort of a bigger story to be told in the way in which the film itself, the reorchestrated shows basically almost acted as like a bit of a metaphor for the way that Bastille approached their music and the way that they approached their music.
I didn't hear a word of you just there, Tom. I'm so sorry. But
okay.
I'm assuming you've set the tone beautifully, and we're going to watch the trailer now and hopefully sort out the sound. So I'll see you after this.
I've always been really self-conscious. Lots of anxieties, this tension between absolutely loving making music and the satisfaction of creating something with just really not liking being on stage.
For a band of their size and of their popularity, they'd done hundreds of shows with the same model.
Like any job, you come to a point where maybe you've just had enough. I just had this sort of epiphany moment How can we rearrange these songs in a way that is totally unexpected? How can we have little moments that are like really hair-raising, goosebump inducing, try and show people these other sides of what we do.
You certainly couldn't expect what then happened, in the following weeks.
Remix every song in a live context.
There's kind of an experiment in relinquishing control.
You can definitely get it a lot more wrong, but the rewards can be a lot bigger.
I think I was always expecting it to fall apart.
There was never any idea that anything would come of it commercially.
This isn't going to make you any money. Okay, well then I'll stop being in a band and become a stockbroker. What's the... I mean, he couldn't be a stockbroker, so he shouldn't do that.
There is no point to be proven.
It's about closeness.
It is full of love.
Music, it will always remain a light.
By far my favourite thing I've ever done.
I've never been more creatively fulfilled.
The less definition something has, and the more attracted you are intuitively to it.
I'm back, and I'm using headphones now because apparently it was my
Way.
in-ear thing. So I can hear you all again now.
Hey.
Amazing.
Right.
Nice to have you
There you
here.
go. Now we're not just saying random answers into the ether. We're actually speaking to a real person.
I
That's
mean,
what
my
Jack-
answer
I was
sounded
like,
like
no.
an answer into the ether, so as in, it's probably the same thing, really. But yeah.
So let's talk about
Tom, I thought you did a
the
wonderful job
beginnings.
representing the film.
Tom, I'm sorry I didn't get to hear what you actually said about the film, but so I'm sorry if I tread on some
great.
stuff you've already said. But I'm interested in how it all started because clearly you've been filming for years.
Yeah.
Tom used to live with Kyle. They've been mates for years, and when Tom was at film school, we were doing our first ever tour, which happened to be with a bunch of other bands and artists, and I think there were 5 or 6 different artists, including ourselves, and we all slept and lived on a barge that went up the Thames, and we stopped at a different town every night. And Tom, as part of his uni project, came on the tour with us and started filming. And basically, then, we were lucky enough to have our band kind of take off and become our lives. And Tom never really left. And so he's been with us through pretty much everything that we've done, that we've been lucky enough to do over the years. He's toured pretty much all over the world with us and been along for, 3 albums, 4 mixtapes, all of these orchestral projects that we've done, and anything and everything in between. And I guess we never really knew what all that footage was for. We've used bits along the way, but yeah, it seems to have found like a home that felt worthwhile. And I think we never really imagined being a band that would have a documentary like this, but this reorchestrated project has been a real passion project for us, and something that we really pushed through, potentially against the advice of lots of people that we work with, and sort of against convention, because it's not really something that many bands choose to spend a lot of time on. But yeah, I'm just so grateful that Tom was around, mainly as a mate, but also, to capture so much of this stuff. There's a lot that didn't make the film, thankfully, for us and for everyone. But yeah, no, it's just a really, I guess it was for Toby, who Tom directed with, and Josh, who produced it, just to have this kind of like bottomless goldmine of stuff. I say goldmine, that makes it sound like I think everything that we do is gold, and it's definitely not. But just like
through hundreds of hours of
this bottomless cesspit of footage of us lot. I think, yeah, it just was a kind of opportunity. And then I guess the challenge was for Tom and them. I'm sorry for speaking for you, Tom. I'm terrified of the sound issue, so I'm just keeping on talking. But
No, trust me, I've got you now. I've got you.
I guess. Oh, great. I guess their challenge was to try and find a way to tell a story that wasn't just moderately successful band do slightly weird gig with a big orchestra and it goes all right. Like, I think that didn't feel like enough of a compelling narrative to anybody, as much as we love the shows and as much as I'm super
It'd be a nice
proud of
20-minute documentary, but not a feature-length documentary.
And what Dan said was definitely a conversation that we'd had a number of times on our WhatsApp group between me, Toby, and Josh a few times, and I think the word of the WhatsApp group was like Jeopardy, basically, and like thinking, it's all these shows are amazing, and there was all these elements to it, but it was what really gives this sort of compelling story all the way through. And I think what the archive brought to that was basically the Jeopardy was that you really saw these guys coming from absolutely like rock bottom foundations of making a band in the truest possible way, like doing all the pub shows, like playing under a bridge, whatever it was, like literally busking on the streets of Norwich, and sort of, slowly building up. So the Jeopardy really throughout that is actually pulling off playing it somewhere like the Albert Hall. Like you're fully invested with these guys by the time you get to that point, because you feel like you've been on the journey with them, basically. Is what we hope to do.
At what point was it for you, Tom, when you figured out what this... I mean, I'm assuming that the original plan was going to be, we're going to film them on the biggest tour that they've ever been on, and then 2020 happened and you had to figure out like what the conclusion of the documentary... I mean, I'm assuming that's what it was going to be. Is that the case?
Well, sort of. I guess like the Albert Hall felt like pretty much as big as it was going to get for Reorchestrated, and then Hamburg happened with like a 50-piece orchestra, and these like... And then it was the Palladium, and like these reorchestrated shows sort of kept growing and growing like over time. And there was a plan to go and do, I think, even more, and even mild talk to take it further outside of Europe and whatever else. But COVID stopped some of that, and it's so there was a plan, I guess, for it to get bigger and bigger. But I think the main point that
it was. Sorry.
It's all right. No, go.
Delays meant that was even ruder than it was meant to be. Sorry. We'd actually we'd like to stop and take 2020 off from touring. We at the beginning of the year we did a couple of big reorchestrated shows, and then we toured in Australia and New Zealand, and a bit in the States. And then come sort of February, March time, we'd actually planned to take a year out from playing live. So in a weird way, I guess we'd sort of been gearing up for the first proper break that we've ever had since we've started. In a kind of strange way, I guess we were prepared in that sense more for the weirdness of last year, more than some, and I think feel quite lucky for that. But I guess this project just felt really special, and it felt like something we wanted to share, and the shows themselves were like just an amazing thing to be part of. I feel like I've said it a bunch, but obviously the kind of the spark of the shows is our music and us as a band, but it became much more about like Johnny, who was the arranger, and Senab, and the choir of amazing singers and the orchestras and the musicians that we got to play with, and the shows came about. Or I know it sounds well cheesy, but just a celebration of collaboration and of playing in these beautiful, unexpected music venues with just amazing musicians who put us to absolute shame, and who we feel like incredibly fortunate to get to collaborate with, really. And that
one
felt
of
like
the things that I really took away from the documentary was like it was a celebration of collaboration. I don't think that sounds cheesy at all. I think that there's too much emphasis a lot of the time, I think, in creativity on the auteur, the person who can do it all. And I actually think it's refreshing to see the sort of what I find to be more realistic and the more fun way of making stuff, which is that we do it together as a team, and everybody brings different ideas and contributes different things. And I think that's what this documentary and these shows were celebrating.
Yeah, no, I think that's true, and I think a lot of as well as the collaboration, it was, and again, I don't think me and Toby set out to necessarily make a film about creativity in like such a in like a lofty, pretentious way, but I think what it turned out to be was a film about what goes into creating, is in the process of it, having to challenge yourself, having to put yourself in situations that make you feel uncomfortable or out of your depth, because that's where you get the most out of it. And just sitting back and being comfortable generally doesn't really breed anything exceptional. So I think that sort of came almost by accident, but was just quite clear as we went on that that's what was happening.
Yeah, I really liked the bit in the documentary. It was quite a few moments like this, but where you see the birth of the idea, and you see people being uncomfortable and not quite sure how it's going to be pulled off, and then you get to see that journey and then the conclusion, which is that it was all worth it. Kyle, how did it feel to you when you were learning or relearning the tracks? Like, how was that process for you when you were doing it?
So yeah, it was interesting because, as you can imagine, it's actually quite a lot of work because we're basically allowing the orchestra to take all of the main parts, and then we provide the accompaniment to that. And there was also various like key changes and stuff as well. So although obviously we knew all the structures of the songs, well, ish, we had to kind of just like relearn all of the songs in a lot more chilled back way, because we wanted to provide like just a kind of platform for which to show these incredible gospel singers, or like these, the amazing brass and strings and percussion elements. We certainly wanted to be the accompaniment to them, as opposed to the other way around. So it definitely took a lot of work, and there was a lot of back and forth and kind of a lot of sort of on the fly changes. And ultimately we never, as is always the issue, kind of, we never have enough rehearsal time. Ever. We have sort of, I don't know, back and forth across sort of email threads or whatever, but then ultimately we generally have one day with the sort of orchestral guys, one day's rehearsal, and that'll be the day before, and that's generally how that goes, which is tough.
But
I don't know if that came across. Yeah, absolutely terrifying. I don't know if it came across as much in the film, and maybe it does. It's obviously surreal for us to see a kind of curated version of experiences that we've lived through. But it was that was always the thing. It was like the jeopardy for us was like, literally, we're going to pull this off. There is no room for error, and there was a lot of error on our part. But I guess the safety blanket was how amazing all the other musicians were. So we're like, even if we're terrible, which I definitely will be, at least they'll make it sound wonderful. And I don't know, I think, yeah, Tom and everyone involved in making the film, I think, chose to explore. I think when it came to me, sort of stage fright and sort of the anxieties around that, and imposter syndrome, which is definitely, these are things that I've sort of always felt. And I think as time has gone on, the language around that has evolved to articulate it almost for me. And yeah, it's sort of interesting as well, being much more open and honest about those things than I think we really have been in the past. Because, there's a lot of stuff that you don't share for many reasons. And that being one of them, it never felt particularly necessary to talk about it. But everyone involved in our, in our touring party knows that that's how I am. And it's probably an absolute nightmare. But I guess for me, I found that these shows, in doing something different and in feeling part of something bigger and something that I was genuinely like obsessed with, like being on stage with a 50-piece orchestra, 12 incredible gospel singers, and my friends who I'm in a band with, and making this crazy massive sound that's been sort of rearranged and composed by your closet genius friend Johnny, who's managed to turn all of your songs into these like mini symphonies and flip them on their heads. Like, there's no room for stage fright in that. Like, sure, I felt it, but that was the least important part of those experiences, because they just, I don't know, even as someone that feels mega uncomfortable on stage, you couldn't not be just totally overwhelmed and overawed by those experiences. And I think, there's something about those gigs and about kind of, I guess, classical gigs as well, that it's an experience. It's ephemeral, like you're there or you're not. And I think I'm really happy that we were able to capture those shows in a way that I think does them justice. I think the filming that was done at those shows and the sound, and shout out to Coop, our sound guy, who mixed all the songs for the film. But I think it really sort of, I think they've really like cleverly caught the spirit of everything we were trying to do, and also managed to make us talk about stuff that we probably wouldn't talk about normally in an interview.
Well, this is it. One of the things I really appreciated was that it was like focusing on very niche things like imposter syndrome and like a creative process that usually isn't really focused on. And I really liked that. We're going to take a look at the performance of Warmth from Hamburg. So is there anything you'd like to specifically say about the process of taking Warmth from Wild World and then transposing it to the orchestrated version? Is there anything about that specifically you'd like to say before we watch it?
Ooh, good question. I think Bim, who sings the introduction, she's sung on a bunch of our music since, and it's an amazing, like, powerful singer. And yeah, I think what Johnny did with this is create something that sort of shows off the whole orchestra. You know, everyone kind of gets a moment. There's the woodwind and the brass. The strings are obviously really big and lush. And I guess from like the band perspective, you know, Woody's playing electronic drums. I think with every reorchestrated version of a song, we tried to flip it from what it was. So this live was like a kind of Future Islands-y, quite like electronic, I guess upbeat indie track, but it was also the complete lyrical heart of our second album. You know, the idea that you're watching the news and everything feels so apocalyptic and you can't help but feel like a complete nihilist. So you run to be with someone that you know can be the perfect distraction from that. That, as a song, it became a theme that's kind of run through all of our music since. And so yeah, to do it on a scale that felt like, I don't know, I guess this version feels like it meets the emotion of the song in the way that the album version really doesn't. But yeah, I hope you enjoy it. It really shows off, I think, the full scope of the orchestra, which is awesome.
Well, that's very exciting, especially to know that you had a second chance to make the song hit a certain place that you don't think you were able to do the first time without maybe even knowing. But enough of me blabbing now. Let's take a look at Warmth live from Hamburg on the Amazon Music Sessions. Incredible. That was Bastille's performance of Warmth live in Hamburg from their new film Reorchestrated. I just want to read you some nice things that people have been saying. How about that?
I'm up for that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
That sounds awesome.
Madeline's Home says the documentary was so inspiring. Thank you for sharing this awesome story that you guys have been living. Rawl also says Reorchestrated tells both Bastille's growth and the story of orchestral shows in a very organic and beautiful way. How lovely is this? This is my favourite one though. Somebody called Megapasta said the way that Kyle's journey was portrayed on the documentary was incredible, really moving and important.
Okay then. Just take a few minutes to have a weep and I'll come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. I mean, I definitely want to get your thoughts on that, Kyle, because I agree. I think it's really nice to see, because there's a moment in the documentary where they go through, it's your life. There's a moment where you were told you're not good enough, which is really blunt. And then it's like you being like, all right, I'm going to take that and I'm going to get better and I'm going to earn my place to be a part on this stage with everybody. So yeah, I'd love to know a little bit more about what that journey was like for you.
Yeah, that was I guess interesting. That was quite a common thread throughout the film, which was fine. Clearly, as my face being red can tell you. No, so yeah, I guess it was. You know, we're very young. It's kind of all based around the fact that I've been a particular sort of like Will and Woody, bass and drums, guitar and bass and drums. Kind of, they've sort of studied music their whole lives, and they're good enough to literally teach people. You know, like. And Dan, Dan's Dan. You know, he's the kind of mastermind behind the whole thing. You know, like he's kind of writes all the songs and plays piano very beautifully, and etc. etc. And I was just some guy that Dan met at a party, and Dan was like, "Hey man, do you wanna join the thing?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll come on board." And I think because I'm being in the band was never something that I'd go on.
Dan wants to add something.
Just to jump in. Yes. But you also had been in band, and you are also. I think it's important to say, like, the Kyle's potential. Like, when we all watched the film for the first time, I think all of our reaction was like, "That's amazing that you spoke about that, Kyle." And sorry if you felt like that loads and we didn't know as much as we should have, but you're also not that bad. and you're like a really fucking good musician. So yeah, sorry, I just wanted to say that because I think it's important. I think a lot of people think that, having watched the film as well. Like, they're like, dude, you're really talented. So yeah. Anyway, but back to you.
Yeah.
Sorry for the intervention.
Cheers. I think I guess it's clear to say I didn't not know how to play an instrument. Do you know what I'm saying? You know, like I went to university and I studied music technology, sort of. So I guess it was just that everyone else was so clearly amazing, and like. Now I'm good. Like I can say now that I'm good because of, you know, joining the band, I kind of this guy can do what he's meant to do, and then it's like, okay, Kyle, it came from management, and then the management told the band, and the band told me. So it wasn't as blunt as you might have put it, Jack. It wasn't like, Kyle, you're out, you're shit.
We probably made it seem a little worse. So that's the filmmaker's prerogative, obviously.
Of course, man. You got to pull the strings, man.
But I think that's the thing, is in what you know.
That was the thing I enjoyed watching in the film.
Courageous manager gets their band to make the brand.
But we didn't go out we weren't in any way going into the interviews even thinking that it was going to be, you know, having Kyle as this like amazing like side story with a, you know, triumphant end, like playing the grand piano at the El Philharmonie. That wasn't in any way the plan. But then when we did these interviews over the summer during lockdown, in which we basically, you know, which gave us, you know, so many themes and basically the backbone of the entire film, really. But as in, you know, just seeing the guys, and I was so proud of them for this, like really genuinely opening up in a way, you know, I've known them for years and we've done countless little silly interviews and all kinds of stuff like this, but they've never ever like spoken like this on camera ever, I think is fair to say. And was so proud that they did. And then when Kyle was like, you know, talking about this stuff, it just became, you know, it wasn't forced. We didn't coerce, no one was coercing him into saying it, but equally, you know, it wasn't like a deliberate plan of being like, right, okay, well, this happened to Kyle, so we'll make sure that, you know, he says this or this. It was more just in the environment. I think everyone was speaking much more honestly and openly than they had before, and maybe stuff that normally they wouldn't even think about mentioning started like coming to the surface, which is why I think we got some really good stuff out of that.
And I think just in terms of the sort of development of the film, like obviously we had all this footage and we really wanted to tell the story of Reorchestrated, but, you know, it was important to us that it was Tom that directed it and Toby that directed it, and that we, other than having made it and been there and done the stuff, like that as a film, in order to make it interesting, in order to make it engaging for people that don't really care about Bastille or have never heard of us or like don't like us, to make an interesting film that was something that was about more than just, like we said, band do gig or band do orchestral project. I think it's like Tom said, it took, I guess, those chats to really inform what the film would become. And I don't think any of us thought it would become what it has and be as kind of open and revealing. And it's, like you said, Tom, it's much about the process of creativity and the process of trying to achieve something different and hard. No, it's more about that really than it is even about us. And it's about insecurity, and it's about like, that kind of bizarre path. It happens a bit like with the Reorchestrated shows. It happens to be based around us, but I think it's about something a bit different. And it's really interesting. We just put our trust in them and had no editorial control. And I think it's a much better film for that. You know, they sort of divided and conquered us. That doesn't make any sense. We were divided and conquered. No, again, doesn't make any sense. Fuck, I don't know what I'm saying. The divide and conquer.
We interviewed them one by one.
That's it. There you go. But and separately, and we didn't really say what we talked about to each other. And so, a lot of the things that we see that are in the film, I heard for the first time watching the first cut of the film, and that was a really kind of bizarre, surreal, nerve-wracking experience. We watched it for the first time, you know, in a break in lockdown, sort of last year, in a little screening room in London, and we were all at opposite ends of the cinema with masks on, and, you know, hadn't seen people in ages. So that in itself was pretty overwhelming. Hadn't been in the cinema in 6 months. So that in itself was pretty overwhelming. And then watching a version of our lives like spewed back at us by the cinema, and then your friends saying things that you have never really heard them say before. It was pretty intense and overwhelming, and you know, and kind of amazing. And I think also going back to what you said before, it was interesting for us as people who don't often reminisce or look back that much at what we've done, and we definitely don't sit around talking about like our achievements or lack of them. It was a kind of interesting confrontation of everything we've done before, and a kind of enforced reckoning with everything that we've sort of done or tried to do, and all via this sort of lens of this film. So it's definitely been I feel like I've just said the word interesting like 40,000 times in the last 10 minutes, but it was interesting. Which also is what my mum would say if she didn't like one of my songs. So, yeah.
It's an interesting one, Dan. We're going to have some fan questions now. I think it might even be saliva. I'm not sure. Salivia Baker. Salivia, I think it's how it's pronounced, actually. I want to know what the huge book is in Dan's background.
Oh, it's a book of quotations.
Oh, lovely!
At our studio, and Jack, who works here, has this big book of quotations to forever when he's writing music and he needs some inspiration. He'll like flick through.
Has that ever been helpful for a Bastille track?
I've never used it before. In fact, the spine looks very unbroken, so I'm not sure how much Jack's been using it either. But maybe one day.
It's just for show. Meg Trish says, was there any anxiety about sharing your anxiety or insecurities with the world?
Well, I guess.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, I think that sort of as Tom said, kind of we were kind of split up as a band, but because we know Mids really well, when he said, you know, you can be as open and as honest as you know, kind of as you want, but just know that you can say too much and we can pull it back afterwards. Which is a very clever thing for him to have said, because we ended up being very honest, and then Zero got pulled back. So
not pulling it back.
So yeah, I think it was oddly, I think, quite cathartic talking about the kind of nerves and anxiety and imposter syndrome and stuff that we felt. I didn't feel nervous about talking about it, but I think because of having that safety net because I know later on, if it's on, like if I watch the film and I don't like it, I can pull it back. But it was, again, you know, it was done so well thanks to sort of the sort of whole team that. So yeah, I didn't really feel anxious about talking about the anxiety per se.
Yeah, I think as well. I guess it's the idea of like knowing that it's going to be in a film and people are going to see it. There's something very vulnerable about that I suppose could be. I mean, I know how that feels to know that you're going to be on the internet and the thing that you said is going to be there forever. Like it's terrifying sometimes.
We've never like. I don't feel like we've ever tried to be like a band, and in the sort of like cliched sense, like we don't think we're rock stars. We never have. Like we've always kind of tried to subvert the idea of a band by doing mixtapes and not being in our videos and trying to be as cinematic and weird as possible. And I think this Reorchestrated project is because we've never really postured as like thinking we're really cool, or like that there's any need for sort of like macho bullshit. Like that's never really been part of who we are. But at the same time, we're also relatively private people. Like we're all really open with each other, but there's a load of stuff, you know, in our lives and in our sort of professional lives as well that we just don't think is necessary to talk about. I think we're highly, highly aware of our privilege and how lucky we are to be in a band and in the position we are, and to have this as a job, and you know, and all of these things that we're, you know, very, very fortunate to have and to do, and the, you know, things that have been easier for us because of whatever. And so I think we've always been very aware of not talking too much about our problems and about any difficulties we might have with what we are lucky enough to do, because obviously like with touring, it's a huge part of your life. It requires you to give all of yourself and your time for like months and months and months on end. But no one wants to hear a band complain about touring. Like, you know, in other jobs we've had, and you know, like our friends and stuff, they're like, you're so lucky you get to play music and travel the world. And, you know, that's compared to so many other people, that's, you know, that's so lucky and such a privilege that I think we've always been hesitant to talk about.
I also think that there's a line somewhere there, isn't there? Like the idea of, because you talk about this in the film, the idea that yes, you are very lucky to be able to tour, but also it does have its own stresses, and it takes a toll on you in its own way, and it's repetitive like anything is, and it's not you complaining, but it's like you become less present sometimes with things like that.
Otherwise, if it was just being like, oh, you know, everything's rosy, the shows went great, everything's lovely, it's just like, well, what's the point? Like, what am I getting out of it?
And if somebody hears you be honest about, like, the sort of stresses sometimes of touring or something like that, and responds by saying, oh, you get to play music for a living, how hard, like, they're not listening. And I think that's the thing, is that you're aware that it's a very privileged thing to be able to do, but also
where we were able to be really open and talk about these things in a way that didn't feel, I think if we probably don't talk about these kind of things that much in interviews because A, we wouldn't want to talk about it, B, it's not often that relevant, and C, like, if you're not speaking to someone that you know and trust, it could be misinterpreted, or it can be misquoted, or it can come across in the wrong way. And I think doing it in this environment allowed us to get our point across genuinely and honestly, and you know, anything we could do in that respect, we sort of kind of tried to. So I don't know, maybe this is part of that. Maybe I'm just nervous and talking a lot. I don't know what I'm saying. Probably that.
Well, I think
not binary
as well. The way that we approached the actual asking of the questions, and this was, you know, as much to do with Toby, who was the co-director, who did an amazing job, and Josh, the producer, in terms of, you know, we had each guy come to this house out in Deptford, amazing location, by themselves, sit them down, have, like, you know, quite a sort of serious chat, which me and the guys very rarely do because we're close mates. So, you know, we don't sort of have those sort of chats, and then basically, you know, put it upon them to get as much out of it as they're willing to put in, and then leave it. Then I left Josh and Toby to basically conduct the interviews, so that, you know, there was a level of formality there, that it wasn't just chatting to me, and you know, and I think that worked really well, because I think if it was me, it might have just got, you know, more silly or whatever else. So I think, you know, again, that was an important part of the process.
Annabelle has asked, specifically to Tom, but I think anybody could answer this. How did you choose which songs made it into the final cut? It was a lot to do with just our favourites. And we had hit lists that we knew that the band loved and that we all loved. Stuff like Fake It, just if you've been to a reorchestrated show, it's almost just undeniable, like what that's like live with Bim singing and everything else. So that was the hugely special moment. I was very keen to include Flaws because I felt that it was an important moment. You know, it's always an important moment with the fans, and it's the first song that the band released, and the way that we presented it by cutting between, you know, going from the pub all the way up to the Albert Hall, it was, you know, it was supposed to be, show the connection with the band and the fans and the journey that they've all been on together, with Dan being in the crowd and all that sort of stuff. So that was one that a section that I really enjoy. And then apart from that, there was just, I guess we showed the guys, and there was definitely a moment where we did insert some more songs in because there was space to, and we wanted to show off as much as possible, basically.
It's really hard, you know, for us, those shows were so special because of the orchestras and because of, because of the singers, and there was so much that they did and so much that Johnny arranged that sounded so amazing, and it was really hard to cut it out. You know, we didn't want this to be a concert film. It's not a concert film. There's a couple of moments of extended music, but ultimately it's kind of bits here and there. But for me, like the bit where Joel sings a version of our song Two Evils, we wanted to include like his verse in that is one of the most impressive vocal moments that I can think of. You know, he's so brilliant. Obviously we wanted to shine a light on Bim and Senab and like all of the singers. and Johnny's orchestration. I think that we picked for the sort of end credits a song called "The Waves," which I think shows off Johnny's almost remixing of our songs. He took that song and rearranged it from the stems and then wrote this beautiful orchestral arrangement around it. And so, yeah, I guess a lot of it was informed by like, what can we include in the film that shows the scope of the orchestra and the talent of these musicians. And I feel like, Mids, I think you did a pretty good job of that in terms of objectively. There's way more story than music, but I think there's enough there. It was just important to get the scale of it across, particularly in Hamburg. That it's so insane.
It'd be weird to bring it up now if you didn't like it.
Yeah, true.
By the way, I thought it was shit. Yeah.
I've got to say as well, not to be all like hipstery about it, but I remember when Flaws came out, and that was I was just like, there's this random song called Flaws, and I absolutely loved it. And then I remember all of a sudden there was an album, and then I was seeing you. I went to go see Muse, and you were supporting them, and also I think Dizzy Rascal. Dizzy Rascal was also.
Dizzy Rascal.
Yeah, it was also supporting.
Yeah.
And it was just this weird thing to see how you guys had grown from like this one YouTube video that I knew existed of this song called Flaws, and now all of a sudden you're this huge thing. I just wanted to say that and just know I've been a fan for a long time. So it's a pleasure to meet you.
Imagine what it was like for us. It was fucking mental. Oh, thank you, mate. Thanks so much. No, that's amazing.
Yeah, no problem.
Just this is really really specific. Was it the video that was all edited together from Badlands, the film? Do you remember, or was it like an actual music video?
It was it was like farm stuff. The video
Badlands,
for Flaws.
Yeah. That's so when we first started out, we obviously didn't have any money for a video, and we weren't even sure what the project was going to be. And I basically took Terrence Malick's Badlands, which I was a massive fan of, and recut it into a video for Flaws. Obviously, that then got taken down when we signed to a record label, and they're like, "That's highly illegal."
You're not allowed to do that,
dude. That's insane that you knew the song. Yeah. It's been like so surreal, and I think Tom quite clever, like quite accurately portrays. When we started, it was a bedroom project. We used to rehearse in my bedroom and make songs on my laptop. And we, when we started out touring, it was proper like old school. We were like in our friend's mum's car and sleeping on our friends' floors around the country. And we had this song that had this live.
And now you're on this massive beanbag. And
it's always, now I'm on a huge beanbag on Twitch, which wasn't even invented when we started. So it is surreal, and it was very really interesting to see it from start to finish, because it's weird. It's so much of that stuff I can barely remember, because it all happened, it all happened at once, and when you're in the midst of it, you're just trying to do it as well as you can and have a good time, and it's often hard to kind of wrap your head around that. So it was very very surreal, and a helpful reminder watching it all back.
Yeah, and going from Flaws to releasing several albums to touring the world to then doing a re-orchestrated version of your music to making a film, it seems that you're constantly wanting to push your creativity and what you can do. What do you think is next? Are you going to do a full orchestrated album? What do you think is the next project for Bastille?
I feel like we're sort of lucky to have that. We've done this trilogy of albums that all feel like they sort of sit together. We've done 4 mixtapes, and hopefully we'll make more in the future. But they've all been really collaborative and really cinematic, and used lots of film music and other artists, and that's been a really fun line. And I feel like Reorchestrated is something that we've sort of grown, and it now has a film which is insane. But like I feel like that'll be a thread that will hopefully continue to go through our career, but yeah, I guess it's about exploring other lanes and seeing what we do next with our main music, and trying to constantly surprise people, and all I can say is whatever comes out next will be definitely far from reorchestrated. But it's that I think we're just excited to still be able to make music, still be able to make albums, still be able to release it. We just want to, create little worlds with whatever we do, and make them really different from time to time, and just hopefully constantly mess around within the structure of pop music and push. I don't know, undermine the fact that we're like a band and four guys, and constantly try and make music that feels different. And yeah, we're really, really excited for what's next. But I can feel the evil glare of our managers from wherever they may be, telling me to shut up.
Well, Dan, Kyle, and Tom, it's been a pleasure to speak to all of you. What was that? Sorry.
I was just saying, if you keep Dan on long enough, he'll play all the songs on his phone to you. So just keep him going.
It's the new album.
Yeah.
Jack, thank you so much for hosting this, and thank you for having us, man. Seriously.
Cheers, man.
It's been a pleasure. Is there anything you'd like to say before we say goodbye?
Well, watch
watch
the film if you haven't.
Watch the film if you haven't. Yeah.
Watch the film if you haven't.
Yeah.
I'd like to say, Kyle's a really good musician. I'd like to say hello to Woody and Will, who aren't here, and to Toby and Josh and everyone else involved in the film. And yeah, thank you so much to everyone who's watched this, but also like anyone that's watched the film. It's been really nice and cathartic and amazing to read the responses. So thank you, and cheers, Jack, and also thanks to Amazon for making the film happen and enabling all of this stuff. Getting to play with orchestras is an absolute fucking dream come true. So being able to do that, you feel very lucky. And obviously Tom. So I don't know why it's like I've just won an award.
That you've won an award.
Talking like I've
Well done.
I need to shut up.
Well done, Dan.
Thank you, Tom, for. Thanks, Tom, for putting up with us and for making the whole film. And thanks, Mum. And thank you to God, who I don't believe in.
Agree with.
Dan, Tom, Kyle, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here. I hope we get to cross paths again soon. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, mate.
Thanks so much. Take care. Bye.